Hello, I'm Bert Oliver, and welcome to Bowie News and Views. And my co-anchor, John Ross, will introduce our guest.
Okay, thank you, Bert. Always a pleasure to be here in your esteemed presence.
Proud to fill that position.
Our guest today is a very, well, I shouldn't keep going on like that, an old friend, John Lally, who I first met, must have been 35 years ago at least. You were an aide to Winfield Kelly. And prior to that, did you work for him when he was a councilman as well?
Just in the campaign. I wasn't on his staff. I worked for another councilman at the time.
Well, how about...
Thought I was his flack. I was the flack.
That was perfect, yeah. And I had to deal with you on a regular basis.
That's right, absolutely.
Yeah, tell us about that. When did you start? You went to Bladensburg?
Well, I went to Bladensburg High School and was up at Johns Hopkins University and undergraduate, and realized that there weren't too many law schools with basketball teams, so I figured I better get some reason or some ability to get into a law school. So I got involved with some political campaigns, and Joe Tidings was up for re-election in '70, and that's where I cut my teeth on that election, and that led to Steny Hoyer, and then Steny Hoyer led to Winfield Kelly, and then...
That was Steny when he was...
He ran for the special election in 1971.
That's right, I forgot
when they first brought on charter, the mayor and city council type of government. And worked for, did I think, a good job. Steny won the Democratic vote, but he didn't win. It was a nonpartisan election, so we had our first county executive was a guy named Bill Gullett, who was a Republican.
Right, I remember him.
And that was a very interesting transitional time from the old commissioner form of government, to the old back room, to a bigger back room, I guess.
You've probably heard some of the old curmudgeons about, not me, of course, but they say that actually changing from the old county commissioners to the new county council system wasn't really that big of an improvement.
Well, I actually, I would disagree. I think
of course, I was being facetious.
But I think we went from an agrarian, if you didn't have the right last name, you didn't get elected in politics in Prince George's County, to an era when, well, if you didn't have the right color skin, you didn't get elected. We moved through that area, and then if you weren't a male, you didn't get elected. We've evolved over these 30 years. So I think it's a good place. It's been a bumpy ride, but I think we've evolved.
It's a very bumpy ride. Excuse me. It started out well, and then it just tended to deteriorate over the course of time.
Well, you run into term limits. I think it was a good thing. I think when it did come, it changed the rules of getting elected. Getting elected at large was an old way of getting elected, and you had to be part of the machine to get elected, or else you just couldn't mount the campaign. And the machine's a nice way to what we called it.
It was very nicely put.
It's sort of like the Holy Roman Empire. It was neither a Roman an empire,
very
not very holy at all. So but it served a good purpose of getting females elected, getting African Americans elected, getting young people elected or almost elected. We had a pretty, and people didn't have anything to do, that their last names weren't Claggett or Sasser or Bowie. I mean, Bowie was a prominent family in the state of Maryland, not only the city. But if you weren't from that agrarian background, you weren't going to be a candidate. And the bosses were the bosses, and there wasn't any room for anybody different or female. And I think that changed in the '70s, and because of the charter, it became more of an open. We moved out of you can do anything you want as long as you don't get caught. To, oh no, there's actually rules, and there's actually things called the law. And Watergate happened. Which was a very cleansing thing for my generation, when you actually saw presidents resigning and stuff, which is very eye-opening and cleansing to say, you got to do this thing not just because it's right, you got to do it because if you get caught and they'll string you up. So that kind of accountability came in the '70s. It's gone away. It's waned.
Well, I think it's come back a little bit from what I've been reading in the newspapers.
Well, you mean the accountability?
Yeah, the accountability, the financial hanky-panky.
Well, maybe the accountability is not the issue. It's just that there's forgetting about accountability. You will be accountable. I think it's shown up in some shocking ways in local Prince George's County. The contract scandals they had, there were guys convicted and put in jail because they were asking for kickbacks. I just was appalled by that kind of stuff. Not that you didn't think about doing it. You wouldn't be a human being if you didn't think bad thoughts. But the idea that you actually get away with it and try to shake down people is just appalling. We had some trials, we had some prosecutions, and some swift sentencing by the circuit court judges, which hopefully sent a shudder through the administration that, you can think your bad thoughts, but don't do it. Keep it straight. Because when you get into the issues that I deal with, zoning, development, those types of issues, so much of it's based on, in the end, a degree of trust. Tech Center, for example. That thing has forever been governed by voluntary covenants that were entered into between the city, state planning, and the then developer. We handled the zoning for that case way back in 1981. Now, this whole idea of trying to break the covenants is, again, appalling. It's an appalling aspect, and you think a developer can just say, "Oh, forget it." And I think that's not going. It has not, did not happen. Was not allowed to happen. I think the council ought to be applauded for keeping everyone's toes to the negotiating table. At least they can certainly negotiate new covenants, but
Sure.
Bowie's an active partner in those kind of deals. And if you think you can just kind of zoom by things, that's where the normal operating trust breaks down. So that's I think that's been part of the evolution of development and the change in the county that I've occurred.
John, as you said, you were involved in zoning and so forth.
Still am. More closer
of course.
to metro stations now, but yes.
The question I have, and of course, Maryland owned the Bowie Tech Center, but we call it something different at the time.
It's now called Melford.
Actually, the University of Maryland Foundation,
Yeah.
which was the fundraising arm of the University of Maryland, a nonprofit, was associated with the then developer, Chuck Shaw, who we came in for the zoning originally. And that was supposed to be similar to Stanford University in California, where the university actually owns the land and leases out buildings. So that was the legal relationship.
Oh, it's the University of Maryland Science and Technology Center.
Yes,
where
that's
it
where it
came
got its
from.
brand name.
Now I don't know what it is.
Well, there was a business teacher over there, I think, was involved, participated in that. I can't remember his name. But from that, and the governor, there was an open thing over there with a big tent and everything. What I couldn't understand, and I was there, and I'm sure you were there, introducing, here we are. Why did it take so long? Was it the covenants to get it moving?
There was actually a shift in the political leadership of the University of Maryland, and they decided, it was used to be the chairman of Suburban Trust Bank, and he was the business guy, but a private sector volunteer. But he decided that he wanted University of Maryland to go north into the into Howard. The corridor to be in was the I-95 the corridor, and they did one of the classic turn your back on Prince George's County moves. Bye bye Bowie, and that was literally that decision to. They'd rather go MoCo than stay in Prince George's County. And we have historically suffered from our third county in the line in terms of development opportunities. But we've consistently always caught up. We went through the regional malls, we went through the McMansions, we went through all these cycles, and I think eventually Tech Center is going to be a mixed use, and I would prefer that.
I would too. I'm wary of those two ugly office buildings.
Yeah, well, I live.
I see it from my back window.
Pass them every day going home.
I'm the northern boundary of the Tech Center.
We should point out that you are a Bowie resident.
Yes.
In
Well,
Sherwood
actually,
Manor.
just right on the edge. I can look across as Governor Palin says, when I wake up every morning, I can see Bowie on the horizon.
That was well put. Well put. Yeah, it's not incorporated over there, is it?
Actually, no. I actually thought of personally
annexed, rather.
just annexing my own house with my wife, just take my wife and I to vote. But I figured I'd give somebody here a heart attack.
Well, you'd have to collect your own garbage.
That's true.
Which
Yeah.
you do now. Anyway.
Well, I got to collect my own garbage.
Well, the county, I guess, does now. Huh?
I'd set the city council buzzing if I went into somebody's district, It
may have been Gordon Wells, the chairman at the time at the University of Maryland. He was chairman of the Suburban Trust, but I think it was before him.